cloud of suspicion surrounds the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, whose bodies were found in their Santa Fe home. The sheriff now says they are not ruling out foul play.
Gene Hackman's Santa Fe estate was more than a secluded celebrity home. Hidden beneath the property was a mysterious underground tunnel that remained secret for decades.
The door being ajar, of course, raises other questions. Was someone else inside the house? Had someone discovered them before? Did they leave the door ajar on purpose and they opened the door before they were overcome?
How could a 95-year-old man with Alzheimer's have been connected to something so unusual? And why was it kept out of the public eye? What was found inside raises new questions about the estate's history and purpose, turning an already tragic story into a mystery that continues to spark speculation. The unseen discovery. On the cold morning of February 26, 2025, federal agents arrived at Gene Hackman's sprawling Santa Fe estate with routine expectations. The front door stood unlocked, and the house showed signs of prolonged neglect: pills scattered on the bathroom counter, a dog deceased in a closet, and two others wandering the grounds confused and hungry. Inside, the bodies of Hackman, aged 95, and his wife Betsy Arakawa, aged 65, were found. Official reports cited cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's as causes of death, with Betsy having passed nearly 3 weeks earlier, her absence unnoticed in one of the most heavily secured properties in the region. At first glance, the scene seemed straightforward, a sad but ordinary passing of life. Yet, trained eyes noticed discrepancies unusual for a quiet death in a monitored home. Furniture had been recently moved in ways inconsistent with the limited mobility of an elderly couple. Carpet impressions and scuff marks suggested a deliberate rearrangement, and documents in Hackman's study appeared hastily sifted through and returned. Two theories emerged. Either an intruder had methodically searched the premises, or Hackman himself had orchestrated the scene to control what was found. The tension rose when forensic photographer Patricia Okino, part of the initial FBI team, performed a standard sweep of the private library's mahogany walls. Her hand brushed a panel that felt hollow rather than solid, an immediate warning signal in a place where secrets were carefully guarded. With steady pressure applied to a hidden spot, the wall shifted open to reveal a narrow stairwell etched into stone, descending into complete darkness. This hidden entrance had never been mentioned in official investigations or reports. The passage itself was no crude excavation. Steps were worn smooth by decades of use, reinforced with modern materials, and maintained with fresh electrical conduits visible along the walls. The air rising from the depths smelled damp and stale, yet oddly alive, as if the subterranean space was far from abandoned. What followed was something more puzzling than the tunnel's mere existence. It was a warning, a sign that what lay beneath was far from ordinary. The secretive nature of this discovery shook the foundation of the official narrative. A 95-year-old man suffering from advanced Alzheimer's was guarding a secret passage that no one in law enforcement or public scrutiny had ever uncovered. It raised questions nobody had the answers to. Why was such a sophisticated tunnel hidden within this estate? What was Hackman protecting? And why had this knowledge remained buried for so long? Despite the discovery, no immediate detailed public disclosure followed. The official story clung to the natural causes explanation, leaving the tunnel's existence a hidden cornerstone of the investigation. Those on the scene understood, however, that the natural death narrative was rapidly losing credibility. The house, the tunnel, and the shadows cast by its secrecy were pieces of a puzzle that would begin to fit together only after much deeper probes. This initial reveal was a doorway into a labyrinth, not just physically beneath the estate, but buried deep within layers of encrypted history and deliberate obfuscation. From silent walls to airless stairwells, the house was far more than a passive container of two elderly lives. It was a fortress built on silence, standing watch over a secret that demanded decades of guarding. The true scope and purpose of what lay beneath would come into sharper focus only after experts and insiders unpacked the layers of the property's design and construction. What happened next was to challenge not only what we knew about the estate, but about Hackman himself. Understanding the hidden tunnel means first understanding what kind of stronghold contained it. That revelation takes us to the imposing and meticulously engineered fortress Gene Hackman called home. The fortress estate, Gene Hackman's estate in New Mexico, resembled nothing so much as a fortified compound rather than a typical celebrity residence. Sprawled across more than 23 acres of dense forest, the property was surrounded by 12-foot-tall stone walls and reinforced steel gates. The perimeter was alive with motion detection arrays sophisticated enough to differentiate between wildlife and human intruders, while thermal imaging cameras provided overlapping fields of surveillance designed by someone with deep insight into security protocols used for high-level government or diplomatic protection. Security consultant Richard Castagnano, who specialized in protecting diplomats and defense contractors, was hired to assess the Hackman property for insurance in 2019. Upon reviewing the property, Castagnano was initially convinced he had a clerical error. This was not a private home, but a government-style installation. The technical infrastructure equaled or surpassed that found at foreign embassy compounds, and yet no embassy had ever been listed at this address. Inside the estate, the layers of security deepened. There were separate power grids specifically dedicated to sensitive zones within the building, hardened communication lines absent from public blueprints, and a backup generator far exceeding what a private household would realistically require. Every staff member was handpicked, vetted extensively, and bound by non-disclosure agreements that covered not only information, but also the construction process itself. This fortress defied Hollywood glamour and celebrity privacy concerns. It was built to endure threats far beyond paparazzi or fan interruptions. The draft of highly classified and strangely compartmentalized zones suggested a facility designed to protect something valuable or dangerous. That something was yet to be revealed, but the signals were clear. This was a residence converted into a bastion of secrecy. The dense forest covering the property served as a natural outer perimeter, blending with the high desert to add layers of camouflage and complexity. The physical barriers were paired with electronic surveillance sensitive enough to track movement across the land in minute detail. Every inch of the perimeter was crafted to delay and detect, if not outright prevent, any unauthorized approach. What made the fortress more intriguing was how incongruous it appeared for an aging Hollywood star with Alzheimer's. Most celebrity estates sported privacy walls, but nothing close to this scale of operational security. The extensive redundancies and tactical features reflected the mind of a person deeply aware, or deeply afraid, of infiltration or discovery. The question then arose, what justified such extraordinary protective measures? Security of this magnitude implied a threat environment far more serious than public visibility or theft. It hinted at a legacy, or secret, that Hackman was either entrusted with or chose to guard with exceptional diligence. As the layers of protection came into focus, the underground spaces finally began to make sense. But the story only grew darker when those with insider knowledge started to speak about the construction itself. The fortress was more than walls and cameras. It was a carefully designed stage for something hidden, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to look beneath the surface. Builders and secrets. Miguel Reyes, a seasoned foundation and structural specialist with 3 decades of experience in Santa Fe, initially regarded his work on the Hackman estate as routine. His expertise with concrete and structural integrity gave him an intimate understanding of what standard construction looked like and what did not. Early in the 2000s, Reyes was called to the property for what he expected to be typical foundation work, but he quickly realized this project was different. Certain sections required walls 18 inches thick, a measure far beyond what typical residences or even wine cellars warranted. Reyes recalls asking what the space was for, receiving the answer storage, which scarcely satisfied his expertise. He said, "You do not build storage like you are preparing to survive a detonation." The level of concreting and reinforcement was bunker grade, meant to withstand unimaginable force, not mere household needs. Reyes was paid 3 times his usual rate for the job and made to sign a non-disclosure agreement forbidding him to discuss the project publicly for 20 years. That agreement only expired in 2024, 1 year before Hackman's death. Even then, Reyes could only speak about his limited role. Other contractors who handled the deeper, more secret sections operated under an even stricter layer of confidentiality, and Reyes was told repeatedly that these lower levels did not exist. This strict compartmentalization left Reyes with few details about the full scope of the underground work. The fact that specialists operated under different clearance tiers suggested a project entangled with multiple layers of secrecy and perhaps involvement beyond civilian construction. It was clear that the structures below were not simply community wine cellars or mundane storage vaults. The contractor's silence and restricted access echoed a hidden hierarchy of knowledge, where even participants were deliberately kept in the dark. Reyes's own uncertainty about the broader project added weight to the feeling that the tunnel and vault were components of something extraordinary, far removed from typical building codes and residential purposes. Moreover, the presence of modern reinforcements, fresh wiring, and ongoing maintenance hinted at continuous use and adaptation over decades, not abandonment. The estate was a living fortress, not a forgotten relic. The puzzle of the builder's secrecy held a critical clue, that whatever was beneath the estate was known well before Hackman acquired it. The layers of security and confidentiality suggested that Hackman's role was more than incidental. He was chosen for a purpose tied deeply to the property's secrets. That realization drew investigators and experts ever deeper into the estate's mysteries, where architecture met hidden history. And just beyond the reinforced walls and guarded secrets lay the vault itself, a place untouched for decades and filled with relics no one expected to find. Each discovery built toward a deeper understanding of an enigma far older and more complex than a Hollywood star's twilight years could explain: the tunnel chamber. After descending nearly 300 feet beneath the library floor, Dr. Patricia Okino entered a chamber unlike anything expected beneath a private estate. The vaulted room measured approximately 40 feet by 60 feet, its arched ceilings instantly identified by local historian Dr. Elena Vasquez as consistent with late 19th century Spanish colonial construction. Yet, this was no ordinary cellar or old storage room. It was a carefully crafted vault, layered with decades, possibly centuries, of hidden history. Dr. Vasquez's research uncovered a troubling pattern in the property's past. Between 1920 and 1965, the land had changed hands no fewer than 7 times, each transaction cloaked in shell companies, anonymous trusts, and deliberately vague paperwork. Documentation seemed engineered to obscure ownership, as if those involved wished to vanish without a trace. The legal smokescreen only deepened the aura of mystery surrounding the estate. Between 1945 and 1950, 3 separate geological surveys had been commissioned on the land, yet all resulting reports were incomplete. 2 of the surveyors mysteriously left New Mexico within months, while the third died in a suspicious car accident just weeks after completing his assessment. This disturbing trilogy of events had gone unnoticed in public records until Vasquez began piecing them together, adding ominous context to the chamber's secrets. Inside the vault, agents discovered 47 wooden crates lining its stone walls. Some were intact. Others had begun to decay, spilling their contents. Artifacts layered with dust thick enough to suggest decades of undisturbed stillness. Yet near certain crates, the dust showed evidence of recent disturbance, indicating someone had accessed the chamber before the FBI's arrival. And it was not law enforcement. Among the finds was a leather-bound ledger dated 1947, its pages filled in German with names, dates, and unexplained financial figures. Another crate contained 63 fragile, yellowed photographs depicting men in unidentifiable military uniforms, their gatherings set in dim, secretive locations. Several photographs had names surgically excised from the images, with 2 faces famously cut cleanly from a picture taken at what appeared to be the very tunnel entrance decades prior. The photographs, coupled with the artifacts, suggested a clandestine operation or group with affiliations unknown to any mainstream military or governmental body. The unsettling removal of identities implied a purpose beyond mere secrecy, erasure from history altogether. This chamber held more than relics. It was a crypt of forgotten or hidden alliances. As Okino swept her flashlight across the far wall, she uncovered another profoundly disturbing element: hundreds of precise symbols densely carved in stone, from floor to ceiling. The markings evoked an intense and inexplicable reaction in her. Despite 22 years of forensic experience, she described physical discomfort and a sense of seeing something forbidden. The chamber was no forgotten cellar. It was a vault of encoded knowledge and warning, sealed away beneath layers of stone and time. Whatever had been stored here was deliberately hidden behind a fortress, obscured in shadow, awaiting discovery, or cautioning against it. This chamber raised new questions. Who carved these symbols, and what message were they conveying? The answers, it seemed, rested somewhere between the cryptic carvings and the cold metal door that still lay sealed beyond. The language of the past was about to collide with modern investigation in ways that confounded and disturbed even the experts. A deeper understanding of these cryptic carvings would be essential to unlocking the vault's true purpose, shifting the investigation from architectural mystery toward a puzzle of forgotten knowledge and secret codes. Cryptic symbols and codes. The intricacy and density of the symbols covering the chamber walls rapidly became the obsession of forensic and scientific experts. Over 300 individual glyphs were photographed during the initial survey, each carved with precision and intentionality. Dr. Okino admitted she could not focus on any one symbol for more than 30 seconds without a visceral reaction, unlike any she had experienced in her career. Researchers analyzing the documented carvings found no consensus on their origin or meaning. Some symbols bore resemblance to medieval alchemical notations, complex glyphs that have puzzled historians for centuries. Others resembled technical schematics, diagrams suggesting mid-20th century engineering concepts, far beyond the capabilities expected in Spanish colonial times. A third group of symbols defied classification altogether: strange shapes and lines with no known parallels in historical or technological archives. The diversity of these markings suggested multiple layers of meaning, potentially combining arcane, mechanical, and cryptographic elements. The possibility that someone had encoded a message accessible only to initiates was a compelling theory. Astrophysicist Dr. Marcus Webb was brought in to carefully analyze the spatial and mathematical relationships within the carvings. Working for 3 intense weeks under strict security protocols, Webb delved into the configurations, mapping the symbols against known astronomical data. His findings were as astonishing as they were unsettling. Certain configurations aligned with celestial positions not from recent history but approximately 12,000 years in the past, or, more disturbingly, 12,000 years in the future. Such a temporal dissonance suggested knowledge of orbital mechanics far advanced for the 19th century. Whoever created the symbols possessed an understanding that challenged conventional timelines. The implications of Webb's assessment led to 3 circulating theories among those with access to the full documentation. 1. The carvings were the work of a wealthy eccentric, an occultist fascinated with astronomy and mysticism. 2. They served as an encoded system, readable only by someone holding a specific key or cipher. 3rd, the most unsettling, that these symbols represented knowledge deliberately passed down through generations of custodians who guarded secrets never intended for public understanding. If the 3rd theory held truth, the official story of the estate, its history, and Gene Hackman's involvement was only the surface of a far deeper and stranger truth. The symbols were not mere decoration or misdirection, they were a warning, or perhaps a guide, for those who truly knew how to read them. The last image Dr. Okino captured that night was a deep spiral carved into a stone panel 3 feet off the ground, featuring a small human figure at its center. Above this figure was an unknown script, and beneath it, hastily scratched in English, were 3 chilling letters: R-U-N, This abrupt, stark warning underscored the danger and mystery embedded in this underground chamber. Such a message begged the question, what was so perilous that it demanded decades of concealment, cryptic symbols, and an iron door built to never be opened? The answer continued to elude investigators, but the warning was clear. Beneath Gene Hackman's estate lay secrets meant to remain buried, shielded by both stone and the silence of time. The symbols were a silent language, part history, part caution, and part enigma, that challenged all who dared to look too closely, beckoning us toward questions with answers still beyond reach. The iron door. At the far end of the underground vault, hidden behind a collapsed stack of crates, federal agents came face to face with an imposing iron door. Towering 8 feet tall and nearly 4 inches thick, its surface was corroded and crusted with decades of rust and grime, clearly untouched for an extraordinarily long time. This was no ordinary door. It lacked any handles or external mechanisms that a visitor might use, suggesting it was never meant to be opened casually, or perhaps ever. The door's locking system was a heavy, corroded mechanism built for one purpose: to keep whatever lay beyond that barrier permanently sealed away. Metallurgical analysis raised immediate questions. The alloy composition did not match anything typical of late 19th century New Mexico craftsmanship, hinting at a much later construction date, possibly mid-20th century. This suggested that someone had returned decades after the chamber was first built to install a barrier of extraordinary seriousness. One anonymous FBI agent recalled the moment they pushed aside the crates and saw the door for the first time. "We thought we understood what kind of place we were in," he said. "Then we saw the door, and everything went completely silent." Its overwhelming presence seemed to convey that it had been waiting longer than any person present had been alive, and that what it concealed was not meant to be disturbed. To this day, the iron door remains sealed. Official statements from the FBI are vague, carefully worded to avoid revealing details about why the door has never been opened. Some investigators speculate the tunnel might connect to a broader underground network, linking to Cold War installations or military infrastructure deliberately erased from official records. Others believe a secondary, more dangerous chamber lies behind the door, containing whatever was considered too risky for the outer vault. A smaller group, the most cautious of all, suspects the door was locked permanently by individuals who understood exactly what they were locking away. They made a conscious choice that it should never be opened, a decision as much about containment as warning. In this theory, the door serves as the final line between the surface world and something so hazardous it demands absolute quarantine. Thermal imaging conducted on the door revealed an alarming detail: airflow on the other side. Sensors detected subtle temperature gradients consistent with a functional ventilation system. This was not a sealed tomb or a forgotten chamber exhausted of oxygen decades ago. The space beyond the door remained alive, circulating air and maintaining a connection to the outside world. The ventilation suggested not only that the space continued deeper underground, but also that it had a way in and out unknown to those above ground. Thermal scans reached only so far before dissolving into static, which in itself extended beyond any structure that could reasonably fit within the property's boundaries. This hinted at something vast and hidden, extending beneath more than just Hackman's land. Miguel Reyes, the contractor, remembered a detail that hadn't fully registered with him at the time. There had been discussions about installing blast-resistant doors, industrial-grade, government specification barriers designed to protect against catastrophic events. Though he never worked on that part, he confirmed others were found to do so. The origins of that work and the identity of the teams involved remain unknown and deliberately obscured. Neighbors in the area had long sensed something unusual beneath the surface. Reports of unexplained vibrations, muffled mechanical sounds, and power fluctuations traced back to the estate lent weight to the idea of an active, functioning underground complex. The iron door stood as a silent sentinel to all these mysteries, guarding a secret so profound that no official agency has dared to breach it. The existence of this sealed iron barrier invites another question. What was happening in Hackman's final days above this silent threshold? Surveillance and last days. In the weeks leading up to his death, Gene Hackman's behavior and the estate's internal activities pointed to a strange, almost ritualistic engagement with the underground secrets he guarded. Despite his advanced age and Alzheimer's diagnosis, Hackman appeared unusually active within the house, especially in the private library that concealed the tunnel's entrance. Forensic evidence suggested he was deliberately relocating documents and furniture, perhaps curating what investigators would eventually uncover. This careful rearrangement of personal belongings challenged the official narrative of a peaceful passing. Scuff marks on floors and fresh impressions in carpet indicated recent, purposeful movements inconsistent with a man in the final stages of cognitive decline. Documents appeared hastily sorted and replaced, as if Hackman were exercising control over the story his estate might tell after his death. What remains particularly troubling is that Betsy Arakawa's death went undetected for more than 3 weeks on a property equipped with one of the most sophisticated private surveillance systems in the American Southwest. Internal camera footage from those weeks was found corrupted or entirely unreadable. Only external cameras captured sporadic patterns of light moving through rooms at odd hours, with the library light activating more than any other. These surveillance anomalies raise pressing questions about who, if anyone, accessed the estate during those critical weeks. Was Hackman alone in the house? Or did someone else navigate with purpose? His motions toward the library tunnel suggest he may have been preparing for the inevitable investigation, to conceal some secrets while exposing others. Investigators remain baffled as to why a 95-year-old man with advanced Alzheimer's would be the only person with known access to the tunnel in those final weeks. The sophisticated security network, staff under strict non-disclosure agreements, and the protective design of the estate leave many wondering how such a solitary guardian could manage this labyrinth alone. Former employees of the estate add another layer of mystery. Several staff members vanished without a trace after leaving, their last known addresses dead ends, and their family members reporting years of silence. Local researchers who began probing the property's history similarly disappeared from record, some relocating out of state with no explanation. Power fluctuations linked to the estate, unmarked trucks arriving in the dead of night, and neighbors' accounts of mechanical sounds emanating from underground create a backdrop of continuous hidden activity. One neighbor even recalled seeing Hackman standing motionless outside in the early morning chill, staring intently at a fixed point on the grounds, the same location where the tunnel entrance was later confirmed. The perfectly synchronized silence over these final weeks contrasts sharply with the complex surveillance apparatus designed to catch any intrusion. This contradiction suggests an invisible line had been drawn between what Hackman controlled and what remained beyond reach. The last days of Gene Hackman and his wife do not fit the quiet, natural ending reported officially. Instead, they hint at a man still fiercely guarding something beneath his feet, and a secret that may yet outlive him. Hidden legacy and unanswered questions. Despite the overwhelming secrecy and extraordinary measures surrounding Gene Hackman's Santa Fe estate, the full story remains elusive, buried under layers of silence and deliberate obfuscation. Federal agents still process the scene, with the 47 crates from the vault secured in federal custody, their contents largely unacknowledged in the public domain. The leather-bound ledger, the photographs, and the mysterious symbols remain undeciphered, and the iron door continues to guard whatever lies beyond, untouched and sealed. Meanwhile, a shadowy development has emerged that adds urgency to the mystery. Property transfer paperwork has been filed by an anonymous trust registered in the Cayman Islands, a shell entity moving quickly to acquire one of the most restricted properties in the American Southwest. This transaction is happening while the official investigation is still active, under tight classification, and despite repeated Freedom of Information Act requests being denied on grounds of an ongoing inquiry. The question echoes, ongoing investigation into what exactly? The deaths of Hackman and his wife were officially ruled natural causes, cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's. But the extraordinary federal containment suggests something far more complex. Since when do two natural deaths trigger this degree of institutional secrecy and legal shielding? The layers of security, surveillance, corruption, and coded warnings imply an agenda to bury not just bodies, but truths that authorities may believe dangerous to expose. Reports from investigative sources suggest Hackman did not stumble upon the tunnel by chance. Instead, he allegedly knew about what lay beneath the land before purchasing the estate. The price paid was reportedly well above market value and structured to limit public exposure. For decades, Hackman acted as the ideal guardian, wealthy, discreet, with a public profile that offered the perfect cover. Hollywood's spotlight provided camouflage, while the estate functioned as an impenetrable fortress. For 40 years, the world around him turned apathetic or unaware, allowing the mystery to remain sealed. As time ran out and the shadows of Alzheimer's crept closer, Hackman seemed to engage in final acts of preservation, reorganizing documents, altering scenes, steering investigations to the surface and away from the hidden depths. Now that he is gone, the anonymous trust is moving forward, prompting new fears and questions. What awaits those who reach the iron door first? What secrets, horrors, or knowledge does the airflow on the other side breathe life into? And most troublingly, what consequences might ripple through the world as this buried chapter finally begins to open? Neighbors' testimonies, vanished staff members, power anomalies, and unmarked vehicles all weave a pattern of ongoing activity and unseen influence centered on the estate. Yet no clear answers emerge, only fragments of a narrative that suggest the property is part of a much larger, possibly global, network of hidden infrastructure and guarded knowledge. The real story may not be about who built the tunnel or even about Hackman himself, but about what was so important it demanded 4 decades of vigilant guarding. And now, what happens when that vigilance passes to unknown successors? The silent trust behind the purchase and its invisible motives may reveal the next chapter. But for now, the estate stands as a monument to unanswered questions. The hidden tunnel beneath Gene Hackman's home is more than a secret. It's a legacy wrapped in mystery, warning, and unresolved questions. From fortified walls to cryptic symbols, what's beneath challenges our understanding of history and secrecy. If you found this story intriguing, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into mysteries waiting to be uncovered.